or many of the advantages which you've heard about today have been true for 50 years or more. In fact, it's one of the reasons Boye is in Senegal. Senegal is ideally situated to be a hub. It has good relations and it has advantageous arrangements with the US through AGOA and with the EU through the economic partnership agreements. So the question is, why is it then that Senegal has had a very poor performance in the previous 30 years? One could even say longer. In the last 30 years, average growth in Senegal has been 3 to 3.5%, which is only 0.5% of per capita. And why would the next 30 years be any different? The answer, I think, to the two questions are linked. Senegal, like many economies in Africa, has had very large rents, which can easily be shared amongst a small part of the population. And for them, the status quo is fine. But clearly, this is not sustainable if you need to have the needs of the large majority taken care of. And if the large majority are to live in 21st century conditions instead of 19th century conditions. And the good news is there's a president who owns an economic plan. I think this is the first time that this has happened in Senegal. Senegal has had many economic plans, but not a plan which has been done by the president in a very public way. This is a plan which is a good plan. 2/3 of the investment in that plan is supposed to come from the private sector, hence it's important that this dialogue with you takes place. But much more important is to figure out how to move away from a rent-based and rent-sharing economy to one where you can do globally competitive production. And I think this is what the PSE is about. The PSE has said what needs to be done. Now the question is how to do it. If we look at early results are positive. In the last 2-3 years since the PSE was being formulated and has begun early implementation, growth is now projected at over 5% for this year. And if reforms to open up economic space to foreign investment, not foreign investors trying to make deals, that there's been plenty of in the past, but foreign investors who come with minimum government regulation to do what they do in China, for example, produce for the world. Senegal is a much better place than China to produce for the world, and Senegal today is much better positioned than when Deng Xiaoping took a fishing village called Shenzhen and launched China to where it is today. So the objective conditions are there, but it's a question, just as in China some decisions have to be made, in Senegal some decisions have to be made. The plan is there, but as the Minister of Finance said when he presented the plan in Senegal, and as Mrs. Lagarde repeated when she went to Senegal to encourage the Senegalese society as a whole to adopt and implement this plan, she recalled the Minister of Finance said Senegal has had many plans in the past, the problem is implementation. And implementation, I think, is where you come in. I think at this juncture, Senegal needs your investment much less than it needs your advice. When you invest in the US or in any regional country, you do not need to go and see the President and the Minister of Finance. You know the rules of the game. You don't need ex-ante authorization, there's ex-post verification. So I think the challenge for Senegal, if this plan is to be implemented, is not most successful. But there are about 50 developing countries that have gone the same way as China, do business, and where people come in and invest for globally competitive production, not to seek favors on sharing rents. And this, I think, while certainly efforts should continue to improve the overall business climate, maybe doing what countries like Mauritius, which is like or countries like China have done, is more productive. Even if Senegal, with great effort, were to improve its ranking in doing business by 10 ranks every year, in 10 years' time, it would still be in the 50th position, or lower. That doesn't mean that effort shouldn't go on there, but a lot of effort, a lot of political capital will give you very little mileage in terms of unlocking the type of investment we're talking about. investment to create new wealth, and investment not only by foreigners such as yourself, which will be crucial, but also investment by SMEs. Until SMEs need to move from the informal sector for a very simple reason. They cannot grow there. So they need to move from there to the formal sector, as well as having foreign investment, both of which will work together for globally competitive production. But for that to happen, you need to find a way of going faster. And this is our advice, is the lesson from China, the lesson from Mauritius is it's politically very difficult to take on the lobbies which like the rest, which they got used to. So start from scratch. The Communist Party was not at all convinced by Deng Xiaoping. They just had run out of options after the disasters of Mao. And China has lots of fishing villages, so let's let this guy experiment in a fishing village and see what he does. But they experimented in that fishing village, brought results, and then more and more fishing villages wanted to be converted, and now the interior also wants conversion in China to creating a platform for globally competitive production. So I think the advice is do the same in Senegal. I understand there's a collaboration between Mauritius, which has also gone down this path, together with the Senegalese government to develop the zone there. And what we've suggested is this needs, and I'll make a point which I hope that you won't disagree with, but we think that businesses recognize that taxes need to be paid if you want an effective government and public services. However, the taxes need to be at a reasonable rate, they need to be transparent, and they need to be very easy to comply with. So our advice is the 50-year tax holidays which are on the books now and which are attracting no one have to be replaced by a reasonable tax system. Again, I don't say this is what needs to be blindly adopted, but one suggestion is take a look at the tax system in Mauritius, which is very transparent, very easy to comply with, a flat rate of 15%. Income is income, you have a high threshold, but after that income is income, and you pay 15%, you pay it online, you never have to negotiate with the tax authorities, and it works very well for all parties, and it finances the investment in human capital, and it finances the infrastructure that is needed. So we need a low but reasonable tax regime in this economic zone. The Shenzhen of Senegal. The challenge is, can Senegal have its Shenzhen, and through its Shenzhen show what can be done? And obviously, you are not going to do that if you're not collecting revenue. And I'm starting with revenue because obviously the IMF is concerned with macro stability, so we emphasize that. But I think more important than that is, because there are no lobbies, because you're starting from scratch, we suggest that the government should think about a governance structure where the government of Mauritius, the government of Senegal, which are the partners in developing the zone, would also have representatives of the workers who will work in the zone, but more importantly, the representatives of the investors in the zone. And they collectively would do the economic governance for the zone. My understanding is that the law already allows the zone to be self-governing in most areas which matter. So, including, for example, in legislation. Now, it's important to have the representatives of the workers because you do need to protect worker rights. But you need to protect it as most advanced economies have done, as Mauritius has done, as most successful developing countries have done, in a way that is business friendly. So you do need to protect workers, and that's why the voice of workers is important. But you need to have workers in a dialogue with the people who are investing, so that these protections are developed. If I use the slogan, we need to go away from protecting jobs to protecting workers, which means flexibility for the employer, but within a social security system which will protect workers, especially when they need to move from one job to another. But here's a great opportunity. And if this model works in Senegal, where you have a president who's very supportive, where the macro conditions are good, where the geographical and historical position of the country makes it to succeed and be a good hub of international production, this I think then can also be replicated elsewhere. So for those of you who are looking for places where you could locate for globally productive production in Africa, it may be worth making the effort to make this zone work. And as I said in the beginning, while your investment will certainly be necessary for it to happen, it is much more your advice, your participation in the government. Shenzhen, and if you want Hong Kong taking it one step further, is all about one country, two systems. And this is basically what needs to be set up. It's too hard to reform Senegal very rapidly. Anyone with the best will in the world just wouldn't have the political capital to do it. And the president is doing as much as he can, and has made significant progress, and this is why you see that the growth rate is starting to pick up. But the rate of progress will be way too slow. There's a collective opportunity here. If business is to work with the government of Senegal, let's do Shenzhen here, let's do Hong Kong here. Hong Kong was governed by businessmen for businessmen. There's no reason why this zone cannot be governed by businessmen for businessmen. But of course, unlike Hong Kong, probably want to work a voice from the beginning, and you also want to have the government voice there, so that you have something that has local support as well. But there is a great opportunity for the PSC to bring about the type of development that Senegal needs. And you have a very key role in making it happen. On the Senegalese side, I think it is urgent also that they rethink the model of incentives. As economists, we believe in incentives. The whole thing about economics is finding the right incentives. But unfortunately, the lazy person's approach to incentives is about not paying taxes. That's the lazy person's approach. But the reality, if that were true, Senegal would be booming. No taxes for 50 years. So clearly, this is the wrong set of incentives. The set of incentives you want is to worry about what logistics say, to worry about the regulation, to worry about who you can hire. Today, in a global market using Tom Friedman, the world is flat. In this global market where the world is flat, two engineers trained in the same prestigious school with the same grades at exit are not necessarily identical to the businessman. So to say there's a Senegalese who can do this job, therefore you cannot bring, and we'll have to figure it out, this is the way to destroy jobs. And many studies have shown that when foreigners come in, they create 4 local jobs. So the notion of restricting labor and government knowing best doesn't work. That's I think, a much more important incentive than the tax incentive. There's a large regional market, but does that large regional market apply to labor? If you have talent in neighboring countries, if you're operating in several countries in the region because you're using Senegal as a hub, how much freedom do you have in deciding who you want to hire, when you want to hire? If you want people to come at very short notice because you need to discuss business deals with them, how easy is that to happen? And again, if you are writing the rules together with the government for the economic governance in the zone, these are the sort of incentives which I think you have the opportunity to write and to work on in Iraq. It doesn't mean taxes are unimportant. Taxes also need to be at a reasonable level, but I think there are a lot of successful developing countries around the world. I take Mauritius because I have the best and because it yielded very good results. But there are many tax systems which operate in an easy, transparent manner and which provide the right incentives while also balancing the need to create the resources to develop the country. So, in a nutshell, Senegal is at a turning point. With your help, Senegal can really turn the corner and become an example for Africa, and in the process, the vision of the president for an emerging market economy that is a hub for the region and a platform for global production can be realized. But it will need a public-private partnership, not to build projects, although that will be part of it, but a public-private partnership to set up the right governance structure. If you get the right governance structure, and what's happened in Shenzhen, what's happened in Hong Kong, should give us encouragement that it's feasible. Thank you.